Please join me in welcoming back to Saturday Morning Live our good friend, Major General Spider Marks. Indeed, we live in interesting times. So with that, let's get started. Sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Am I good with sound, Jennifer? Am I good? Everything? Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Fred. I wish my mother were with us. She'd appreciate that, but would be in total disbelief. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady, beautiful brunette from West Texas, dirt poor. Came from this family where her mother, my grandmother, was born in 1887 or something like that, and had a master's degree. So how does that happen? And her husband had a 7th grade education. So in my world, when people say, do you think, I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but when Churchill, he gets elected out right after the war, he wins the war, and they say, you're not good enough. So he disappears, but then he comes back in to be the prime minister a second time, and then retires in 55, I think it is. And his last press conference, a reporter said, Mr. Prime Minister, I just kind of off the wall question, what do you think the world is going to be like in 500 years? And then the reporter can't stop talking. He then says, do you think women will be in charge? Churchill's response was, still? So I was raised in that household. My mother only had sisters. Two of them got PhDs. One ran a department at the University of Texas, hook 'em horns. I mean, kind of cool. So she would be in total disbelief. And then the other thing is, my dad was a military guy, so we moved all the time, and et cetera, et cetera. The family pictures I'm the youngest, before I came along, was my mom, dad in a good-looking uniform, and brother and sister. And then the next pictures, when I'm a part of the family, and mom is brunette, very pretty lady sitting there, happy family. Then the next family pictures, when I'm 2, I'm sitting there on my dad's lap, not my mom's lap, and she's a white-haired lady. Still very beautiful, but she's got white hair. And I think I contributed to that, and so she gave it back to me. I've been a white-haired guy since I was probably 35. But so thank you again for the invitation to return. And I'm looking around. I saw a wonderful lady in the cafeteria, and Fred and I were having a cup of coffee with John Berry. Didn't realize how much I have in common and how we've intersected in our lives, John. Screaming Eagles and Olmsted Scholarship. I mean, it's super, super wonderful. But I heard this wonderful lady was walking out, and she was chatting with a couple, your colleagues, your fellow residents. And she said, are you going, again, hand to God, she goes, are you going to listen to that guy talk? and this couple sitting at the table said, of course not. Boom! That's wonderful. Again, so my mother would smile. She, of course, what are you going to listen to this bonehead? What is he going to do for you? Well, thank you again for the re-invitation. I must owe people money or something. That's why you're bringing me back. You're going to shake me down. Obviously, things have accelerated since we were here last, right? Yeah, just a tiny bit. Yes, ma'am, just a tiny bit. Let me kind of set the table with just a couple, literally, bullet points. We all know what bullet points are. So that's either a subject or a verb or just a subject. Spheres of influence are shifting. We all grew up with a certain perspective on spheres of influence are shifting. Parenthetically, World War II ended 80 years ago. That's a drop in a bucket. And this world that we've been a part of, that we helped shape over the course of 80 years, is shifting. Is it going to be for the worse? Is it going to be better? It's shifting. We could talk about what we think. So number one is spheres of influence are changing. Number two, the definition of risk. In the world that you helped shape, thank you. I've been a part of, you helped shape me, thank you. Risk was something that we could embrace, but we could define pretty broadly. In other words, Pax Americana and what we were able to accomplish in terms of influence and presence, financial structures, Bretton Woods, NATO, other alliances. What happened over the course of those 80 years? We were able to exercise, we could influence, we could project power, and we could resist others projecting power simultaneously. And we did that. You did that. That's now being challenged. And this administration is challenging that. We can talk about it. The third thing is the notion of decoupling from China. I don't know how we do that. I really don't. We have more in common with China than differences. I'm having a hard time trying to figure that out. It may have just been a shot across the bow from this administration, provocative, transactional, kind of a, here's my first offer, and then we'll back it off and figure out what it really looks like. But I don't know how we decouple from China. We are inexorably linked, primarily through our financial systems. And our security systems, we got to talk about that. That's the third thing. And the fourth thing clearly is deterrence matters, and we can talk about that. And it's just not military deterrence. It's all those elements of power. If you're engaged and you're robust and you're vibrant, people pay attention and make decisions accordingly, right? And we can talk about it in a military sense too. We want to look at Iran and Israel 6 months ago with the drone attack and all that. Certain things weren't followed up, right? That means somebody understood what the opponent was capable of. That's what deterrence is all about. Is the run worth the slide? Is the risk worth it? Am I going to achieve something, or is the risk too high? So those are kind of the four things. But what I'd like to do, if you guys are okay, and I'd like this very much to be a conversation, okay? Please, if you have questions, just sound off, and we'll have a conversation for the next 3 hours. Because I understand Fred is buying lunch. It's going to be catered. It's going to be a good deal. But seriously, please, if you have questions, because what I don't want to do is jam on and everybody walks away and goes, I don't know why I spent an hour with this dude. I've got something on my mind, and we could have talked about it. And I know there are answers and suggestions and solutions in the room. I'd like those to pop up as well. I do remember the last time I was here, one of your fellow residents, she said, well, what's going to happen with X, Y, and Z down the road? And I said, well, I don't know, but social, the point was, economic systems. And I said, I'm concerned about Social Security. What's going to happen with Social Security? What's going to happen with the programs that the federal government pays for? And her comment was spot on. She says, well, we can't allow that to happen. I said, yes, ma'am, you're correct. Where are we now? We're still at the point where Social Security is a legitimate concern going forward. And the thing that concerns me, I look at that, I'm just kind of jumping ahead, but I look at that from the person, and we all personalize that, right? Because we all have expectations. This is a contract we had with our government. And we've been funneling off money to the government saying, you guys got it, I trust you, I trust you. That trust is being eroded now when they say it's probably going to be insolvent by 2033. Holy moly, I've got 6 grandchildren. My biggest concern, I mean this quite honestly, I'll be getting emotional. I'm a West Point dude. I'll be buried up there. That at my funeral, and all Mark's men die right before Christmas. So that's going to happen to me at some point. I hope it's not this year. But granddad right before Christmas, uncle right before Christmas, all West Pointers. So there's kind of a pattern. I don't think I'm going to break it. And they all rest there. So I'm waiting for this to occur to me. And my grandchildren hopefully are grown, married, have kids themselves, et cetera. And they're going to go to the funeral. It's going to be cold, collars up, it'll be blustery. That's what happens. It'll be blustery. And then as they're throwing the dirt on me, or maybe I'll be cremated. I don't know. I'm a Catholic. I have a nephew who's a priest. It's okay to be cremated now. He says, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Before you couldn't. I'm meandering. I know. So whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen. And all of a sudden, my oldest grandchild, who's grandson, he's going to say, okay, everybody gather around me. He goes, okay, everybody, all you other people who are the outlaws, you got the in-laws and the outlaws, all you guys who are outlaws, just go smoke a cigarette or go over there. He brings everybody in and he goes, okay, here's our final assessment. Granddad was a good guy, right? He tried hard. He was a good guy. But based on what we're seeing today and everything we're kind of chatting about, but man, he really screwed it up. God, I hope that's not the case. Fundamental pillars that hold us up as a nation are being tested. They've been tested through time. But it's in our face right now. We get a steady diet of this stuff. So the backdrop of what we're talking about is this, can the republic stand? I'm optimistic. I mean, you guys, I lived in the world you guys helped create. You got to be optimistic about making it through, right? Right? So I'm eternally optimistic. We're going to be A-okay. This will be okay. And we're going to meander through. We'll navigate. It'll be fine. Yes, ma'am.
What are your indications that it gives you such an optimism? I find it the other way. Well, with the Supreme Court in the hands of Trump, our world is just dissolving.
No, it's not. The Supreme Court's not in the hands of Trump.
So optimistic.
Well, number one, before I was a white-haired man, I was a redhead. Redheads are optimistic because I grew up in a hospital. Yeah, I was breaking bones. That's why my mom had white hair. I was never at home. I was in the hospital.
Could you repeat the question?
This great lady wants to know, why am I optimistic? And then I have to challenge your statement that the Supreme Court's not in the hands of Trump. Come on. Oh, okay, well, then it's great. I mean, I view it entirely differently. Entirely differently.
Can we have a microphone for the person who's asking the question so all of us can hear it?
Raise your hand so we can get to you.
But thank you for the question. We can disagree, right? We can disagree. We have to. And oh, by the way, and I look.
Tell me why. Why are you optimistic?
Because of the question is, the question is, why am I optimistic that America is going to be fine? Because I wouldn't be here today if I thought it wasn't going to be fine. And oh, by the way, your generation, my generation, we have our fingerprints on this. I think I did everything in my power and continue to try to give us the opportunity to not only survive, but to thrive. I would hope you'd feel good about what your contributions were, and that when you do an about face and you look at those you touched in your life, you go, I think I made an impact, and I am confident that they're going to make the right decisions and move forward. That's my view. That's my view. Go ahead. Now, let's not. I tell you what. Let's not have a private conversation. Let's not have a private conversation.
I want you to talk about United States policies, not your own individual outlook for your personal.
That was your question. I gave you my answer. But we're going to talk about policies. We're going to talk about policies. Oh, your body language is so crystal clear right now. You are shooting me the bird right now. And I mean, I've been shot at before, so this is nothing to me. This is no big deal. So let's talk about, you want to talk about U.S. policy.
Yes.
I am not she's sitting upright. I am not a politician. And I would suggest, I'm looking at this crowd. I mean, many of us wore a uniform our entire lives. I voted, and so in that case, I was political because I voted, but never partisan. I had a number of commanders in chief that said, here's a task, and I'd go do that task. And if the task I thought was illegal or immoral or unethical, I'd say, I'm out. Or let's have a conversation. How can we adjust it so I can find my way around that? So I think let's look in terms of policy. We have to hang that policy on something that's very practical. Do you want to talk about what's going on in the Mideast right now? Do you want to chat about that? I mean, we can talk about that. We can talk about our relationship with China. We can talk about burgeoning relationships in the subcontinent with India, which is what we don't talk enough about. It's incredibly important. Relationship with NATO. I mean, we can talk through all of those. Relationship with China. We can go back. And that's really the first thing I talked about, which is spheres of influence. I look at spheres of influence. I'm going to make a statement. We can talk about the Mideast. But I'm going to make a statement about our relationship with China. So Xi Jinping, I mean, if the Soviet Union, when I look at the Soviet Union and compare it to communist China, the Soviet Union was not really a communist state. It was an autocratic klepto state. It was not really communist if you read Marx or you read Lenin and the implementation of that. It was just corrupt people running the place with complete autocracy and without boundaries. You compare that to China, that is no fool in a communist state throughout. That doesn't mean they're not as autocratic. But this is a legitimate state, and I don't know how you crack into that. Obviously, the Soviet Union was an aberration, right? It collapsed pretty quickly. They figured out this is corrupt, this cannot last. China, by the way, is incredibly vibrant. Within that construct of communism, look what they've created, 4 of the world's largest banks. Now, they have incredible problems right now. Incredible problems right now. But we have to be able to figure out, we either cooperate with China in this particular case, or we push them away, we accelerate what their problems are, and now we've got the potential of a war in Taiwan. So let me just real quickly talk about, if I can, let me talk about what's going on in the Mideast, okay? And again, if that doesn't work, we can shift. That's a policy decision by our administration to conduct the operations that took place last weekend, and to have a relationship with Israel going forward, which remains incredibly tight. That doesn't mean we've always been in the same formation. We've been in the same formation, but we haven't always been able to lock arms, right? So I think what we're seeing right now in Iran, the regime in Iran, which has been in place since 79, 80, right? That is incredible. It's a theocracy which is incredibly corrupt and has immense problems. Iran on its own is an incredibly modern society, incredibly bright people. My brother-in-law is Iranian, married to one of my wife's younger sisters. He's a US citizen, bright guy, incredibly talented dude. He's my source of information. But you look at the Iranian people have for the last 45 years suffered under this theocracy. Yet within the population, there is no organization like we have in the United States. I'll speak for the United States, not necessarily our partners in NATO, et cetera, who still have the same kind of structure. But I'm intimate with this, is there's no opposition that allows differing voices to rise up, get momentum, be able to be funded so they're visible and you can continue to build on it, that now stands in stark contrast to the leadership in Tehran, right? There's no opposition out there. And we've seen in Tehran on multiple occasions over the course of the last 15 years, the beginning of what I would call revolutionary steps. And what has happened in each case? They kind of just petered out. It's not like there was rampant killing and the military just slaughtered everybody. It's that everybody kind of got together and said, the run's not worth the slide. I'm not going to run the risk of getting involved. That's what we're dealing with in Iran until now. The leadership is feckless. Its ability to export terrorism has been decreased. Hezbollah exists, immensely weakened. Hamas exists, incredibly weakened. Houthis, weakened. South end of the Red Sea, still capable, but weakened. And that's how Iran has exported its brand of control. Iran stands today as a nation that just wants to push everybody who's trying to confront it away. They just want space. And the way they've achieved that is through those proxies. Well, those proxies are gone. That's number one. Thank you, Israel. Those proxies are gone. Number two, the development of nukes. The weaponization of nuclear power in Iran. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. The only nation that wants Iran to have a nuke is Iran. The last thing we need is a rogue North Korea-like state, we could talk about that, in the Mideast. That would be unacceptable. And I think the world would agree that's unacceptable. So where we stand right now, based on intelligence Israel had, they began a process of eliminating that capability. And they've done an incredibly good job. I don't know. I don't have any inside baseball information that says this is where we are. But I can state with confidence the ability of Iran to develop a nuke weapon has been delayed and pushed back considerably. And we understand what that gives the world. Additional time to try to figure it out. That's where we are right now. That's a good thing. And the US involvement in that was a great thing because it further pushed that away. I'm not an administration guy. I do not know what obliterated means. That's not a military term. I don't know what that means. I know what it means from the street perspective. I've been obliterated as a young man when I got punched in the throat by somebody I was pissing off. I got obliterated. That's not a military term. I know what destroy means, I know what defeat means, I know what delay means. I can define them and I can give you the kind of the definition of those. But obliterated kind of makes no sense to me. So I take that, I go, okay, I got it. That's a political statement. The point is Iran is incredibly weakened. Is there going to be a regime change? I don't know. I don't know. Devil you know versus the devil you don't know. Who would follow Khamenei? I don't know. What would that look like? How long would that take place? What type of mess would it be to have a transition? Would it look like 1979 again with the Islamic Revolution? I don't know. Would it be something where there's a heck of a lot of killing and incredible chaos? I don't know. All I do know, practical sense, and you benefit from it, is 3 million barrels of oil a day go through the Straits of Hormuz from Iran. Want to cut that off? 3 million barrels a day. And when we sanctioned Russia after their invasion of Ukraine, we figured out how pipes got turned. Pipes don't necessarily go in the same direction. We have different buyers. China's buying all that oil. We have to have a relationship with China. The number one country that's concerned about what's going on in Iran right now is not Russia. Russia's feckless. It's China. We've got to be able to think about the outcome of what's taking place in the Mideast through the filter that exists in Beijing. So I think where we are right now, it's a place where there is, for 5,000 years, everybody's been trying to kill the Jews, and it hasn't happened. I would think they get the message. Israel is now what we call the new hegemon. It's not Saudi Arabia. It certainly has never been Iran. It's not the Gulf states. It's Israel. And nations are paying attention to that. Now, can Israel continue to do this at this pace? Probably not. Those of us who have been soldiers in the military before, we understand the term culmination, right? Tacticians win battles, logisticians win wars. So you have to turn around and say, okay, how many interceptors do I have if Iran is going to continue to strike me with missiles? Can I continue to intercept those? Pretty effectively. Not totally, but pretty effectively. Iran may reach a point of culmination. How many missiles do I have? How many launchers do I have? Israel's done a phenomenal job taking those out. When do they say, we got to stop? So we're now in the midst of a ceasefire, an agreement that they're not going to be belligerents at that level. It could pop up again tomorrow. So that's my view of the Mideast. What's going to happen to Gaza? That's anybody's guess. I don't think we're going to build 3 18-hole golf courses there, like our president indicated. And the only way that gets resolved is the Palestinian people have to get some form of leadership. Who's in charge? Who's the elected leadership in Gaza right now? That's a quiz question. Hamas. And where's Hamas? Most of them have been buried. Most of them are dead. Is it the Palestinian Authority? Well, they were elected out, and they were elected in by the Palestinians. So what's the voice of the Palestinians? Think about it. I don't know. So who do you deal with if you're trying to achieve some type of outcome where their voice is heard? I don't know. So Israel is right now in the middle of Gaza, which they prefer not to be. They prefer to go back across the border and turn it over to somebody who wants it. Well, they're there because they know if they're not there, what's going to happen? They've essentially, by the operation they've conducted, there's a term called mowing the grass. You can mow the grass, but you have to keep mowing the grass. Until you kill those weeds or you kill that lawn, it's going to keep springing up. Hamas isn't going anywhere. Every leader that raises a hand ends up getting buried about 72 hours later. You'd think they'd kind of say, okay, we got to go recruit somebody who's not necessarily too much aware about what goes on here. That's the story with Gaza. So it's a mess. Hezbollah and the government in Lebanon is now coordinating in a way, again, with Israel to try to keep Hezbollah quiet, which is great. A concern in the Mideast is Syria. Syria is ungoverned space. It's got a new government. It could spin apart. You could end up with 3 Syrias. I don't think that'll happen. But we know what happens when you have ungoverned space globally, right? It's Afghanistan before 9/11. Bad things happen, it gets exported, and suddenly you have to get involved again. And the people that have to go unscrew the problem are the military guys when it occurs. So my view of all this is if you don't invest in our diplomacy, and again, remember there are 4 forms of influences, 4 forms of power. There's diplomatic, information, military, and economic, the dime model. And if diplomacy is not working and economics are not working, then military folks show up. Every time I went someplace and jumped out of an airplane, it's because the diplomats screwed it up. Thank you, State Department. I mean that sincerely. So my view to Congress, and I've testified, I said, if you don't, you better invest in this guy. You better invest in the State Department, or you better be prepared to invest in me. So I'd gladly give you more money if you think diplomacy can work, and I think it can. So that's where we are in the Mideast. What are your thoughts about that? What else do you want to hear about that? Nothing? Yes, ma'am.
Well, latest on the news today is how many did they just purge out of the State Department yesterday? Microphone.
The question is the numbers that are the DOGE efforts, the continued DOGE efforts. Yeah, I'm big time. Well, I have a daughter who's a senior in DHS, Homeland Security. She got doged. Yeah. That's a verb now, so she got doged. So my alternative to that is I'm going to compare, in my mind, I'm going to compare Trump 1.0 to Trump 2.0. Okay? Trump 1.0 was, I'm sorry, say again? I thought there was another question. Nope, okay. So Trump 1.0, I think most folks in Trump 1.0 were concerned about what he was doing, the why, but didn't necessarily question the how, because the how was moderated. Trump 2.0 is a tad frightening from my perspective. I don't question the why. Is our government efficient? I'm asking you that question. Answer it, yes or no. Or maybe.
Depends.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Our government is immensely inefficient. Immensely inefficient. And you're paying for it. And your grandchildren are paying for it. And so are my grandchildren. Makes me livid. I see more people hanging around in our government, in my experience, like what? Let me ask you a question. What the hell do? You spend 7 hours a day at the coffee machine. Totally risk averse. What the hell are you doing? So, should our government be right-sized? Is government out of control? Are you prepared for a $50 trillion debt that eliminates Social Security before 2033? That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. So, the challenge compared to Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0, why he's doing it, most folks agree why he's doing it. Folks would say, okay, I got it. How he's doing it is reprehensible. Nobody, I would not have stayed in the military as long as I did if every unit I was a part of, if I was told to shut up and sit down. Do what we tell you out of the head shed. I'm out of here. And that's what you've got. I have a colleague of mine, fellow West Pointer, bright guy, great guy. He is now the undersecretary, he's about to be confirmed as the undersecretary of defense. I don't know how he can do it. He's creative, he's thoughtful, and he's now going to be in a position where he's just going to have to run an organization, cross T's and dot I's. It'd be horrible. That would be terrible. So it's a good question, but I can't answer if more people are leaving the State Department. I don't know who they are. I don't know how they impact. Do I support it? I don't know what they're doing. So my view is I can observe I try to observe as best I can and kind of get my head around it. There's a lot that concerns me greatly on a number of levels.
Can I ask you, have you seen
use the microphone.
Sure. Have you seen any indication that the Doge efforts, which cleaning up government and getting rid of some of the, doubling over of missions and things like that, I agree with. But have you seen that there's any strategic thought in the way that the cuts are being executed?
No. Well, I don't know what your case is. I mean, seriously, I'm going to be as provocative as you are with me. I don't know what your case is.
My case is cleaning.
No, I know what you're saying.
Cleaning up the government is a good thing. Doing it in a strategic, rational way and with some forethought, as opposed to using a scythe. That is as inefficient and in the long run as less cost effective as trying to get rid of everybody.
Well, your premise, I agree with. The way you followed up as the result, that remains to be seen. I mean, we could sit here and we can connect those two. I don't necessarily know that I would, but I find the whole thing, I mean, I personalize it. I'm looking at my oldest daughter, who's incredibly gifted and talented. She's been doing it for 19 years. I mean, this was her career. Guess what? She'll be back in government. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm going to go back to Gaza.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you said that no one wants it. Who wants it? Is that what you meant? That then no one wants Gaza and take it over. Come and get it.
Well, no, Gaza is a incredible mess that needs time and money and primarily leadership to fix it.
Right, but so it seems that Israel wants Gaza, as well as the West.
Israel does not want. Israel's got an issue with West Bank. It's got an issue with Gaza. Totally agree. The challenge is Gaza has been a problem because of decisions that have been made relative to the direction of the leadership in Gaza for years, in the hands in the hands of Hamas. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
There's no leadership right now. I mean, they've all been diminished. It seems to me.
You are correct. You are correct.
And so I
Your
thought.
point. I got to ask. What is your point? They're leaderless. So if the Palestinian people want to move forward, and I would hope they would, there has to be somebody who raises a hand and says, I am not a part of Gaza. I'm putting it in very simple terms. We're going to galvanize, and we're going to have, somebody's going to have to step up and say, we speak for the people. That's got to happen. And Israel is saying, guys, do it. I don't know. So I look at this and I go, Gaza is, I don't see Gaza turning a corner anytime soon, which is unfortunate. Yes, ma'am.
So do you think that the United States government has a responsibility to help the people in Gaza find the kind of leadership that they need? Is the United States government trying to do that? Do we have any evidence that, sure, they're leaderless perhaps, but what is the role of the United States, humanitarian role, in helping the Palestinians to find the kind of leader they need?
Great. I don't know what the evidence is that the United States is doing, but that goes back to the second point I made earlier. It's definition of risk. I would state with some degree of confidence that this administration probably says Gaza is a regional Mideast issue. Who are the regional players that are interested and willing to engage in a way that helps address that very point you're making? Does that make sense? Obviously, no.
I don't know, to a certain degree. I mean, we all know that the United States, for a lot of reasons, has supported Israel for good reasons, many good reasons. But as you said, it's so complicated, and yet there is this humanitarian issue that, 59,000 Palestinians have died, many of them women and children. We all know,
we got it.
Have seen that.
Yeah.
So how does the United States try to figure out that these are human beings?
They know it.
They know it,
Yeah.
but what responsibility do they have to now take to try to help these folks find the leadership that they so desperately need, instead of just somebody over there saying, I don't understand enough of it to be able to speak deeply to this, but it's a humanitarian question in my mind.
No, it's a wonderful question. No, I get where you're coming from entirely. I get your perspective. The deal is a practical political one. Somebody's got to speak. Israel now, by way of its occupation of Gaza, that's what it's called. It's an occupation, that's what it is. By law, when you're an occupying force, and many of us in the room have been occupying forces in different places, you own the health and the welfare of the population. You own it by law, by law. So that's a statement of fact. Then you look at how can Gaza then now become something other than what it's been in its past, which has been a terrorist state that didn't care about women and children, that willingly got behind women and children and allowed them to die in their efforts to achieve their terrorist objectives. Statement of fact. So I'm not making a statement of blame, but what I'm saying is, are the regional partners prepared to stand up and say, no more? Or are they saying, this is a problem that has to be fixed by somebody else? Can the United States participate? Of course we can. I mean, we're Gumby, damn it. We could do whatever we want, right? We can do it. Are we going to do it? What I'm telling you is I don't know that this administration, I'm not sanguine that this administration is going to be a front for that. I mean, the momentum for that. But they could. I could have that totally wrong. But what I do know is when we did the strike against the Houthis 3 months ago, remember the signal thing where they're communicating in an unclassified, I mean, what boneheads do that? Those guys, those boneheads did that. But we went after the Houthis. Remember the details? Very specifically, our vice president said 3%, which is true, 3% of US commerce goes through the Suez. 3%. Not much, right? Europe, close to 45%. What's Europe doing to solve the problem? Zero. Come on, boys, step up. I get that. I totally get that. But I still want to be on the side of coming up with a solution. So there are ways to do that. You can lead or you can follow. Well, the United States can lead and then you can berate people into following you, or you can convince them to follow you. The point is, in Gaza, the United States looks at that and goes, man, this has always been a mess, and Israel has dealt with it, but there's going to be a Gaza moving forward. And what does that look like? Hey, regional partners, what do you think? That's what I'm saying.
Ken and then Bobby.
Yes, sir.
While the questions have concentrated on Gaza, there's that whole West Bank issue of the far-right portion of Netanyahu's government enabling the settlers to continue to annihilate, threaten, displace thousands of Palestinians, and that we're not paying any attention to that at all, it seems.
Well, I think we are paying attention to it, but I don't disagree with your premise at all. The challenge that I see is it's like any other relationship, whether it's a global relationship, it's an interpersonal relationship. You've got an obligation to make sure that that relationship exists for certain desired outcomes, right? You own that relationship. You can't. Everybody in this room, I was trained by my father. My father never told my mother, "You don't understand." What a great gentleman. I've been married 48 years. I have never told my bride, same woman, I have never told my bride, "You don't understand." I've always said, I must be a complete dummy here. I got to figure this out. So that relationship, our relationship with Israel, has always been tested. And we were the first nation to recognize the state of Israel. I mean, we have this deep, deep connection. Israel Israel has overstepped on multiple occasions. 67 war, phenomenal what they achieved. And they overstepped, right? They got over the skis, which created the conditions for 73. And they almost lost it all, if not for the bravery of 2 tank commanders in the Golan. But mind-blowing, mind-blowing. Two 23-year-old tank commanders in there. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. So the United States has got an obligation, which means in every relationship there is significant scar tissue, and you got to deal with it. Your point's exactly right. I think it's overreach. Can there be a 2-state solution? I think so. Let's start with that. Let's figure it out. And the United States, to your point, ma'am, the United States has got a role in that. But is that the lead position? It doesn't mean we turn our back. Is that a lead position, or is that a lead position behind the scenes that says you guys need to step up and take the leadership position? Why not the UAE? Why not the UAE? One of the first signatories to the Abraham Accords. Why not those guys? I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this has been quite interesting, but I wish you'd change the sort of geographical focus a little bit. And I'm still concerned about what's going on in Ukraine, Putin, the
Yes,
NATO,
ma'am.
The EU, and there are a lot of issues that we have in there. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you have to say.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I always like it when someone prefaces a statement with, "Hey, you're doing a good job, bud. You're kind of an idiot." Ukraine, Russia, Putin, based on, and you understand how we tend to discuss that which is the hot topic above the fold in the paper. I mean, that kind of happens above the fold. My concern with Ukraine is that becomes the secondary impact. That goes to the second point I made about risk. This is a statement where, and we would all agree that our relationship with the EU, our economic relationship with the EU, the United States and the EU is the world's largest trading partner. It's like $60 trillion. It's amazing. Huge, huge. Our relationship with NATO has always been strong. However, who in this room has served in NATO before? Hands? Yeah. I served in NATO for a number of years and was deployed in the Balkans, Yugoslavia going away in the 90s, in a formation made up of NATO partners. It was not a NATO formation, but it was a stabilization force. And the reason I'm telling you this is every one of those nations had been a part of NATO for a while. Most of those nations were founding members of NATO. Deep, deep relationships. And we assumed trust. There was trust. But every one of those nations, we would get into a discussion about a mission that needed to be carried out. And inevitably, a nation in that discussion would raise the red card. Like in soccer, you're out of the game. And they'd raise the red card and say, no, we're not going to do that. In a military formation, that's hard to understand, where a subordinate organization says, no, boss, we're not going to do that. Not because it's illegal, not because it's immoral, it's because we don't want to do it. It's political. So our relationship with NATO is always stressed. And over the course of years, just look at the numbers. When you sign up for NATO, it's a contract. And there are 4 corners to that contract. And you will commit 2% of your GDP to defense. And you got to describe what that looks like. Are there in-kind contributions? Sure. I mean, you can have a force, then you can have stuff that contributes to the overall NATO. You could you could be the guy that runs the country that runs the training ground for something. That's our contribution. That costs a lot of money, and that's what we're doing to improve the force. So all of that is available. NATO, there are NATO partners that have historically been slackers in meeting their obligations. With their eyes wide open, they don't hide anything. They just say, no, we're not going to do it. Germany being the worst. Freaking Germany. You got to be kidding me. You're welcome, dudes. And this is how you say thank you to us? You're welcome. Unbelievable. So let's go back to Trump 1.0. When he came into office, 9, back then there were probably 20-something NATO members. There are 32 now. 9 of those nations were meeting their obligation. 9. That's a failing grade. If you're a teacher in your classroom, you're going to get fired. Your kids are slacking. They're not doing a thing, and you're not doing a thing to motivate. NATO was on its butt. How he went about changing that, not in my playbook of leadership. He publicly harangued everybody. Started the momentum. We are now over 25, and aspirationally, they're going up to 5%. Something worked. We should all say, okay, that's good. Something worked. May not have been the leadership style I would have embraced, but it's working. I'm looking at the result and I go, okay, it's hard to stomach, but I got it. That's good. So the concern with this administration is the statement of risk. NATO, you have vibrancy, your economic footing is phenomenal. You all have your internal challenges, but you've got an obligation to handle this problem in Ukraine. The United States is not walking away from it, but it is stating clearly, let's try to figure out what we can do going forward to make this sustainable. Because to your question, who in this room would want to see the same conditions in Ukraine that we see today, just the images you see today? Would you want to see the same thing 5 years from now? Nobody. Nobody. That's what's going to happen. We're going to be where we are today 5 years from now, unless something breaks, something changes. And that change may be, and I don't know how we get it to happen, but there's got to be an incentive for Putin. And right now he's not incentivized, but he's got to be incentivized to stop fighting. Ukrainians are never going to push him off Ukrainian soil, unless over the course of 5 years they mobilize their military. It's just not going to happen. They're running out of men. They're not running out of creativity. They're not running out of desire to be independent and sovereign. God love the Ukrainian people. I mean, it's a masterful example of what a nation under duress can achieve. Wow. That's the definition of optimism right there. But it's not going to change unless either NATO gets involved. What's the possibility of that? On the ground? 0. So what's going to happen? It's going to have to be some type of a discussion that says, Putin, you keep what you took. I mean, we'd like to punish him, of course. How do we punish him? Do we go put him on a hit list? Yeah, I wouldn't mind that, but who's going to step up? You haven't fundamentally changed the mindset. So do they keep what they have? And then do you have some type of, what do the security guarantees look like? Don't know. But there are several models. I mean, everybody who understands, you do, John, the Berlin Brigade. Ukraine could become another Berlin, where you have nations that have maybe not military forces, but have representation sufficiently large to disincentivize from NATO, disincentivize Russia to come across the border again. Because if they do, they're going after a NATO partner. I don't know.
Isn't Putin going to go next to Poland?
No, Putin is not going to go to Poland. She said, is Putin going to go to Poland? No, he'd be slaughtered. He'd be slaughtered. He'd be foolish. No, I don't see this. The discussion, I have a number of colleagues in Great Britain. The view of the Brits and the continent is exactly what you said. And it's not illogical. But no, that's not is it a possibility? Of course, by definition, it's a possibility. Low probability. He doesn't have the capacity to do that. Could he step over and go to Estonia? I don't know. I've been involved in war games where that happens. But again, he is stretched thin. I look at it from the standpoint, Putin loves being a wartime president. He loves this. And he has a wartime economy. Go Google or go co-pilot Russian economy over the course of the next 18 months. It is in terrible straits. It's almost unsustainable. Does he know that? Of course he knows that. I don't know how much he is going to try to fix that. But at some point, He has to open up his economy like it was before he foolishly invaded Ukraine and got himself into this mess. Can it happen? Well, one of the conditions for a ceasefire could be, a ceasefire is different. You then got to move forward to some type of a, not necessarily a peace agreement, but there's got to be something. Like in Korea, we're not at peace in Korea. But for over 70 years, we've had this division, and all of us who have been on the Korean Peninsula a bunch, we've been at war. It's not declared a war zone, just go to Seoul. It's pretty vibrant, it's pretty cool. But we've got this agreement. Same thing could happen in a Ukraine, where there's an agreement, there may not be a peace treaty, but we got a ceasefire and it's being monitored and it works, et cetera. That could be a possibility. And I think if that was sustained, if that peace treaty were sustained, or that ceasefire, all sins would be forgiven. I think the Western commercial enterprises would go back to Russia like they were before the invasion. I think they'd take that on. They had to write down, industry had to write down billions and billions of dollars of losses. People, infrastructure, et cetera. And they walked away. I would think there would be incentive to go back if there could be some type of sustained agreement. It wouldn't be immediate. Putin, I think, would appreciate that. That's a part of the incentive package.
What about the loss of population?
Population loss in Russia? Yeah, Russia's got a significant problem. I mean, the population of Russia is about 140 million. Soviet Union had more countries, right? Was 350 million. So Russia itself is not a growth population, kind of like China, not a growth population, got some significant problems. Compared to India, boom, it's working. They're busy, but in Russia, the primary concern is Putin has no opposition. Nobody whispers in his ear and says, all glory is fleeting. He doesn't have any of that. He understands what the numbers are, but the numbers are probably inappropriate. They're probably fixed. They don't accurately reflect what's going on. So he's got a population problem, but he doesn't care about it. So is that a downside? Legitimate downside. But again, that will evidence itself over the course of time. Is that 18 months? Where he turns around and goes around, every April they bring in about 35,000 men. Not young men, former prisoners, old dudes, and they put them in uniform. Now, at some point he's going to say, we only got 18,000 this year, what's going on? So, a legitimate concern. Russia is a collapsing entity. And the world doesn't want a Russia that collapses. We've been through that. The transition from communism, their form of communism, to a federal state, the Federation, that was a period of immense turmoil, homelessness, economic turmoil. It was the Wild West. It was horrible. But the West got involved and got mechanisms in place. Yes, ma'am. Right here, John.
Given the population of this country.
Who's talking? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Given the population of this country and the geographic size of this country, how would you make the government more efficient to meet the demands of the diverse citizens?
You're talking us, U.S.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, bottom line is diversification, decentralization. I mean, there are some policies in my mind that need help. I go back to the days of, the example I use is what were known as Kennedy Democrats. And those were very conservative Democrats, politically, socially. And what that recognition was the fact that, and then Johnson carried over with Great Society, is that there are some things in our expectations of what it's like to be a part of this incredible democracy called America, is the market can sustain some things, but there may not be a marketplace for everything. Back in the 50s and 60s, it was education. So you go, okay, there will be federal dollars available to the states. So you have minimum standards. That was realized in large effect, that programmatic during Bush 43. That's an example. Back in the 50s, 60s, medical care, it was not a profitable enterprise, and it was incredibly diversified and decentralized. It was inefficient, and quality of care was incredibly diverse. I mean, the difference of the scales was amazing, right? You go through your own examples. We, the government, can help fix that. There is a huge, huge financial enterprise called healthcare, right? Not being facetious. Of course you know that. So it's you pick and choose where you get the federal government involved to assist where the market is not going to be vibrant. I look at it from the standpoint, I'll give you an example. Veterans Administration, incredibly inefficient, amazingly inefficient. What stands in stark contrast to the VA is, again, the proliferation and the growth of healthcare nationally as a result of a bunch of programs and the fact that the market kind of grew up around it. In the VA, I take this very personally, I buried a bunch of soldiers who went to war with me, and there are a number that 40 years ago would have died, but didn't, because medical care was phenomenal in combat, and they're living with some significant challenges. In many cases, those young men and women have a hard time getting care through the VA because it's not as accessible, it's too bureaucratic. This is not a total indictment of the VA, because the VA can do some phenomenal things. But my view of the VA is, why don't you have a hybrid system and come up with some type of access, credibility and certification access, so I can go to any hospital I want to get care, and that I don't have to drive 3 hours or 4 hours or wait in line for 6 days, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Why can't I do that? That's an area that could be doged to an advantage, but you do it, to your point, strategically. There's got to be a reason why we're doing it, and here's the vision we're trying to achieve. So in my mind, identifying what works we're a collection of states. Identify what works in your states and within your regions within those states, and fund those, and work it so that you can fund those. Because right now we're moving down the path where there will be a lot of people that work, and there will be a lot of people that are expecting that they don't have to work, and that those of us that work are going to pay for that. That is a real possibility. That concerns me greatly. So locally, you've got to have folks that are willing to make those hard decisions. Let's take, who in this room is thinking about moving to Florida? Okay? So the issue with Florida is, this has to go to the DOGE question. Florida every year has a ton of hurricanes, right? They go whipping through. I'm not a Florida dude. And every year they do that, the way they recover is how? FEMA. FEMA dollars. Why do people live in Florida? Obvious. No taxes. No income tax. There's sales tax, but there's no income tax. Wow, that's pretty cool. So people want to go down there. That's kind of great. Save some extra money in your pocket. If FEMA goes away and this rush of hurricanes, which ain't going away, occurs, who's paying for that? Watch Florida institute income tax. I mean, that's locally Florida, because everybody who lives in Maine pays for hurricanes in Florida. That's how it works. You know, that is a direct link. It's not circuitous. You pay money to the IRS, and it goes to Florida during hurricane season. That's a complete connection. You want to keep doing that? Or maybe it's bearable, it's sustainable. Yep, we've got a debt, because it's being covered by the debt. You tie it all together. So there's got to be an acknowledgement that if within our state, we will be in a position to take care of those inevitabilities in our state, right? And that doesn't happen. Why? Because politicians are spineless. You know? Hey, I tell you, I love going to New York City, but this guy, this Democratic candidate, He scares the absolute crap out of me. He's a total socialist. Total socialist. And he's an amazing kid of privilege. You know, his dad's a Columbia professor. He went to Bowdoin College, two pretty good institutions. He's going to take all your money and he's going to put it to programs, and you're going to go, I'm paying for that? Yeah, you're going to be paying for it. You're going to be paying for it. You're not New York State, but you understand what I'm saying.
Time for a Frame's question, one more.
Oh, yes, sir.
My question doesn't apply to what you've just been talking about.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
was going to respond to, you seem to be saying that Russia was in such bad straits that they would not be able to do thus and such. They are a part of an alliance of autocracies that include, well, Russia, of course, China, Iran, and North Korea. And they're getting support through this autocracy, through evading or the sanctions, and in the case of North Korea, they're supplying men to the forces to go over there and fight. I mean, so you haven't mentioned that as part of the formula, I think, or what is sustaining Russia in this.
Yeah, that's absolutely, everything you said, ma'am, is clear and truthful. It's unsustainable. The largest player in all of that is China. And China itself, North Korea is a vassal state of Russia. Russia is a vassal state of China. And it is those connections are, as I said, they cannot be sustained over time. Of course, 10,000 North Koreans can go fight in the Kursk region, and 9,000 of them get killed. Bad investment.
China is the main player in that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. That's why as we discussed early on, I don't see how the United States decouples from China. We have to have a relationship with China. We've got to be as transparent as we can be and make sure that we send the message to China. We don't care about your Communist Party. You want to be communist? You can be communist. And there's a bunch of bad things that happen inside their borders. And you go, you know, I think, you know, as humanity would disagree with that. But guess what? I've got to have a relationship with you. So if I don't have a relationship with you in some sort, we're going to end up with significant, larger problems.
The relationship is based on trading. That's the primary.
Of course.
Between them.
Yeah.
What we have also is.
Yeah, hold on.
What we have also is a feeling of not wanting the United States and the Western approach to world order to be in control. They want to thwart that kind of control. They're very concerned about that. So China can play it on both sides, and is, in fact.
They do.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You summarized it well. Yeah. It's a competition of ideas, right? So if China is not going to alter the way they run their communism, got it. It's a communist state, very autocratic. They've got a number of partners that work with them very well. And the United States is one that wants to export its values and give nations an opportunity. If I put this, you know, China looks at our relationship with Japan, our relationship with South Korea, our relationship with Taiwan, our relationship with the Philippines. That's called the first island chain. China hates that. When they look south, when they look out in the South China Sea, they go, oh, man, I've got all these democracies. They're just rimming me. And I got to turn around and look at my 1.4 billion people and say, don't pay attention to all those good democracies and vibrant markets out there. We got a pretty good deal going here. And for about 30 years, he was right. Well, right now, they've got some significant economic problems. So China wants to confront that, not just to solve a problem, but also to change the narrative, right? What if China, and this is, I go back to spheres of influence. China, what if China, and it has a very, debt diplomacy is what they have. That's called the Belt and Road Initiative. Debt diplomacy. Their debt issues are crushing. If you think our debt issues are a problem, theirs will collapse them if they don't address it. 300% of their GDP is debt. Debt. They got three problems. Demographic, they're running out of people, right? One-child policy, that's backwards. And it was all guys. How's that work? So they got a demographic problem, they got a debt problem, and they have, with the debt, they got the potential for deflation, which means there's no market. So prices will just collapse, they won't have a market. So are we aware of that? Big time. Do we exacerbate that? I would suggest no. I would say let them figure that out. So what if China, in their effort to try to figure it out, they go to diplomacy, what if they went to Scheinbaum, President Scheinbaum, Mexico? And they went to her and say, we want to have a military alliance with you. What do you think she would say? I don't know. What if she said yes? What do you think we would do? Are you kidding me? However, she would say, are you kidding me? You're in Japan, you're in South Korea, you're in Taiwan, you're surrounding me. I'm having a relationship with your southern neighbor. You got a problem with that? Yeah, I got a problem with that. We have to be able to address those realities. And folks have understood that forever and ever. China has a way. China is our, what we call, not just pacing threat, but we have to it's our pacing engagement. Everything that we do, wherever it is in the world, kind of a final thought, we have to consider what are the implications to China, regardless of where it occurs. China has created what's called the polar Silk Road. China is a polar nation. Russia, yes. Greenland, yes. United States, yes. China? China has 8 icebreakers. This is significant technology. We have 2. We're a polar nation. China is making decisions strategically far more quickly than we do, but that's what autocracies do. Great question. Yes, ma'am.
You take 2 more questions.
Sure. Yes, sir. I'm here for you guys.
Lynn and Betty, you'll be the last one.
Yes, sir. You're good. You're good, sir.
Is this on? Yes. This is probably out of your bailiwick, but regarding China, if we end up in a war involving Taiwan, will we be able to keep our supercarriers in action?
Yeah.
It's not easy to sink a carrier, but putting air outside of commission is not hard at all.
Yeah. The premise of your question is a good one, but you have to step back. I mean, first say, are we gonna support Taiwan if China invaded? I would hope we did. That's Marx's view of the world. I don't know. We've had a strong relationship since 1979, Taiwan Relations Act, and we have been embedded in their professionalization, as you know. Our Indo-Pacific capabilities are phenomenal. China is very provocative militarily with Taiwan. I think that is simply to keep our head on a swivel. I don't think there's a lot of reasons why they would not invade Taiwan. Taiwan's #1 trade partner is China. Yeah, and the connection's extremely strong. The Republic of China, Taiwan, was formed in Beijing in 1910. They lost to the communists and ended up in Taiwan, right? So in the president's office in Taiwan, there's a picture of Sun Yat-sen, founder of the Republic of China. In Beijing, up in Xi's hallway, probably not his office, is a picture of Sun Yat-sen. They've got a lot in common. And they've benefited from that relationship. China doesn't want to blow up the world order. They've benefited. But if they did, our Indo-Pac fleet would be vulnerable. But there would be sufficient indicators in advance of that that could really get ahead of, preclude a decision to invade. Everybody talks about the potential of a blockade. Well, a blockade is an act of war. If it's an economic blockade, it's an act of war. So there would be ships going to the bottom of the ocean in that particular case. The U.S. would be involved. Of course, they're vulnerable. And then now we can get into what does that look like and how much of our carrier strike force would be involved.
Betty, more questions are coming, but at some point we need to.
Okay, sir.
Betty.
My one comment is I do not understand how the whole world lets Putin get by with doing what they're doing to Ukraine. The whole world should get together and punish them. It's inexcusable. The second thing you mentioned about Maine paying for Florida hurricanes. I think now there are many, many people up and down the coast that have no insurance on their homes on the beach, in the mountains in Appalachia, in San Francisco where they fall down the mountain. A lot of those people can get no insurance for their homes, so that is helping, hopefully, to reduce some of the payment from Maine to Florida.
Yeah, the folks that can't, you know, my view of this, I'm not heartless about it, but if I built in a flood area, I mean, I made a bad choice. And why do you pay for my bad choices? That's what bugs the heck out of me. There's a lot of people, you go, I'm paying for that dude. Whatever that dude's doing, that's my problem. Damn it, you know? I got it, and I'm not heartless about it because we got to help solve these problems. But at the same time, companies are saying, I'm not going to rebuild. I mean, look what happened in LA. Millionaires being booted out of their houses because they had shake roofs and, no. Well, or in that case, they had insurance, but they now, what's happening in LA as a result of those fires? My house, if my house was burned, I still own this piece of land. It's not leasehold, I own it. Nobody's letting me build on it now, yet I'm paying taxes on it. I'm living in a hotel. Yeah, and you're paying taxes for that piece of charred earth. When can I build? Well, when it gets remediated and we're turning the dirt and we can get infrastructure back in, maybe 6 years, but we'll gladly take your checks. Bad choice. And then they're passing that on to the taxpayers. Like, we're going to help this millionaire who's living in a hotel pay for his land in wherever the heck it was. Whatever.
The last questions from my friend Bob Nichols. We've got 2 minutes here. Bob?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So before the inauguration, a lot of times, as I understand it, we thought that a lot of other countries were watching what was happening in Ukraine because they wanted to see if the United States was going to stay the course. And if so, okay, we need to worry about it if we're a strategic opponent like China or North Korea or whatever. Now that we've, with Israel, the United States has really eviscerated Iran. Could these other countries now are saying, whoops, maybe we made a mistake. Maybe, in fact, the United States will stay the course and we better watch out. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's very possible. But it also define, when the United States got involved in Iran last weekend, the mission was very clearly defined, narrowly defined. We'll still figure out what the results are, right? But it is fair to say that the regime in Tehran's got significant global challenges, credibility challenges, because the Ayatollah and his folks are not meeting the social contract. If I lived in Tehran right now, I'd say, I thought we elected you to keep us safe, et cetera, and that ain't happening. So does it flip that they embrace the regime and say, you're being attacked, we're with you? Or does it flip that says, we're fed up, you gotta go? We'll see. Other nations are looking at that, and of course they're legitimately concerned about it. But I hope we have a very sketchy past in terms of facilitating regime change. And we gotta stay out of that business. And this effort last weekend in Iran, in my view, did exactly that. We could align tactics with strategy, delivering a policy, which is what everybody wants. Israel set the conditions for that incredibly, very elegant strike that took place. Again, we'll figure out what the downside looks like. But I hope, and I don't know, because when the United States did that, we took a lead position. Israel now has to pay attention. They've got to get in the formation with the United States, this administration's lead, whatever that looks like. I don't see us, in any particular case, trying to commit to anything other than we're going to continue to support Israel, and we're not going to do anything else about Iran other than to try to hopefully work a diplomatic solution, which I think they'd be incentivized for. But other nations certainly need to pay attention to it. Yeah, I would hope so. I like your question. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I understand perfectly well the emergency that's happening in Israel between Hamas and Hadass and Iran and Israel, and how dire it is and how much everybody talks about it. I understand, too, the relationship between Russia and China and the oil, and also with Germany and Northern Korea as well. But there's something that's bothered me for a very long time. About 50 years ago or so, I heard the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, and before the World Council, say that he was executing a world jihad against the whole world. I'm not very diplomatic and probably shouldn't raise that question here, but it's part of this dynamism, and I don't know what we're doing about. I know what we're doing militarily. They're doing a wonderful job. And I hope that something for the economics internationally is being done. But what about this? This is the whole world's problem. It's not just Israel's, and it's certainly not is it in the United States alone. It's the world's problem, and nobody even focuses on it. Please help the world.
I know. Ma'am, you need to go to the UN, and I'm not kidding, and you need to say exactly that. I hope somebody recorded that. Because you said it beautifully. God love you. You said it beautifully.
But we need to look at it.
Oh, of course. I absolutely agree. The regime in Tehran is up to the Iranian people.
Yes, it's the gun behind the...
Yeah, and they allowed, in my mind, a terrible mistake. When Khomeini was in Paris, and then he was allowed to come back.
It's all there.
Yeah, and that's what we're living with.
Nobody said anything about it. Nobody looks at it. They're like an ostrich that put their head in the sand.
You're correct. And I must say, the nations that care about this, there are some nations that have their own internal problems, right? But nations that have a capacity to do something about it need to come together and agree on what those desired outcomes look like and do something about it. I totally agree.
Well, they want to be ostriches.
There's comfort in being an ostrich, I guess.
In
the world's, you got to embrace what's crazy about the world. I love your answer to your question. You're answering your own question.
I think the only economic thing we can do is international money.
Well, the problem with sanctions is, example, when Russia went to war against Ukraine, the United States led a global effort to economically sanction Russia, right? Mm-hmm. More nations participated in the World Cup, Soccer World Cup, than got involved in the sanctions against Russia. If that's the definition of ostrich, I think it is. Not my problem. Let other people who worry about that. It's unbelievable to me. FIFA, which is the World Cup thing, FIFA is like a mood ring. They just reflect what's going on in the world. Mood rings, everybody's got mood rings.
Our focus is not there.
I think our focus is, I would disagree with you, but we need partners aligned to make sure that we can kind of all aligned, which means you agree on what the desired outcome looks like, and move in the direction to try to solve that problem. That's what, and I'll be very, very frank. I absolutely supported, nobody asked my opinion, I absolutely supported what the administration did in Iran last Saturday. Phenomenal. That's not sustainable. Our Air Force is smaller than it has been in decades. What you saw could not be sustained against China in a major regional conflict. 72 hours, we'd be out with that type of capability.
Ukraine too, isn't it, about the precious metals?
Yeah, and we should, and I think we have a deal.
Build our military for. We need a new navy. We need a new submarine element, and we need those minerals, don't we?
We do. Yes, ma'am. All of the above.
Got to get them.
Yep. I love it.
Thank you. I'm hanging on to the microphone. Fred Pang has asked me if I would bring things to a close.
Thanks, John.
Army man to Army man, if I'm wearing my uniform and you're wearing your uniform, these remarks will begin with, sir. But we're not wearing our uniforms, and
you outrank me.
You know,
John, you outrank me.
I just would like to tell you, I have not seen from my friends and classmate residents here so stimulated and so eager to get your thoughts on what's going on in the world, and the blunt, open, honest, I don't know the answer to that question response that really matters to us. Your reward will be that you're coming back next year.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you, guys.